I do want to talk about like pushing back a little bit against the prevailing and dominant narratives. You had a post. Let me find it here. Eating meat is healthy, sustainable, and ethical. That's like kind of a controversial statement. In our little echo chamber here, we all get that, but I would need you to defend that because according to the common wisdom, eating meat is healthy. No, no, no. What about this red meat is terrible for you? It's certainly not good for the climate, right? Cow fats and burps and all of this stuff. And ethical, you're a monster. You're taking the life when you don't need to. So how would you kind of defend your position there? How can you say with such confidence that eating meat is healthy, sustainable, and ethical?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I volunteer. We have this really cool community school in our neighborhood. It's called Heritage. It's a private school. And they empower their seniors, so they're like 16 to 17-year-old kids, to have a thesis. And they work on it for a whole year. And then they bring in people from the community to sit with them and really listen to it and challenge their thesis. And every time, it's sad that this happens, but there's someone who's like, plant-based diet's the only way to do it. If you eat meat, you suck. Like, you're missing all these things, exactly what you said. And so I'm in the room with these young adults, and the first thing, and really the only thing that I need to say is, so have you been out to a farm that grows plants? And they're like, well, actually, no. So, all right, well, how can you make this assumption? How can you make such a strong statement and have such a strong position if you've never actually put your feet on the ground for the system in which you're advocating for? And then likewise, have you ever been out? You haven't been out to Rome Ranch. Have you ever been out to a ranch that's regeneratively raising their animals? No. And so really that's where it all begins. That's where you really defend that argument is say, you need to see it for yourself. And it's like, well, is it seeing is believing, or is it believing is seeing?
Mm-hmm.
It when you get there, it is hard to argue. And one of the things that we've been kind of using as an example is we'll be out on the pastures with the bison, and we'll kind of like say, all right, this is what an acre looks like kind of draw it out for someone to see. We'll say, in this acre of land, there's 1 billion sentient beings co-creating in nature. There's a high degree of biodiversity. This ecosystem is functioning. Like 1 billion, that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. So we'll say like, all right, here's how you can do it. So like a ream of paper, printer paper, 500 sheets, like 1.5 inches. So like, what is, if you can say 1 billion sheets of paper, what does that look like? And that's paper stacked up 300,000 feet high. And that is what you're looking at in a system that is teeming with life. That is a system that you're participating in with animals in nature's image. It only happens with livestock. And then you could take that same example to a farm field, and you can see this. It's just so clear that there is a fraction of a percent of the life that is happening in that field. Everything has been decimated. It's been turned into an ecological desert. You've removed all habitat. You've removed all food resources. You've broken the water cycle. And if that's not enough to kill or move all animals off that landscape, you also spray poison on the plants and on the soil. And so it's like this connection, this reality, this is what industrial agriculture is intentionally separating us from. They don't want you to know this. They don't want you to see this, but it becomes abundantly clear when you slow down and you go to any farm or ranch that grows a monoculture.
Yeah, it's completely missing the forest for the trees, right? Just because we've become so imbibed by this narrative around it, I guess, or so hyper-focused on that it's cruel or something else. And I think actually there'd be a lot of crossover with our narratives around we don't want to support caged animal feeding operations either. We're not saying go out and just buy your conventional raised stuff, where you can support these farms. But this biodiversity piece, I think, is very often missed, and what that's going to do for the long-term impact of feeding people. And if, God forbid, I would say we ever end up in Planet of the Vegans, we're not going to be able to do that without mass production of synthetic fertilizers, chemicals, herbicides, rodenticides, etc. What is biodiversity in a nutshell? You said it's teeming with life. What is that life? The soil in the life? Like, how do you define biodiversity, and how does regenerative systems, blow it out of the water?
Yeah. So, again, when you look into the architecture of nature, and you can do this, I can do this, the listeners can do this. Like, close your eyes, think about the most beautiful place you've ever visited in your life. And, some people take a moment and they'll say like, oh, I remember when I was like in a coral reef diving, or I remember like when I went to the jungle in Costa Rica, like the rainforest. And the places that people recount, maybe Yellowstone, something like that, are the places when you really back up and you say, why was that the most beautiful place you've ever been to? It's beautiful because there was so many living organisms all co-creating with one another. Nature will never, in a functioning state, have a monoculture. She's always fighting a monoculture. That's why chemical industrial plant agriculture has to use tools like mechanical tools and chemical tools to control a monoculture, to dominate Mother Nature. And so biodiversity is everything. It's a principle of soil health. It adds resilience to your system. Even if you raise livestock, you can think about biodiversity of the species that you raise. You think about the biodiversity of the species in the soil, which, I'm sure you've heard this before, but a single tablespoon of healthy soil has more living, sentient, more living organisms. We'll say living, so we don't have to do it to define if that's sentience or not. More living organisms than all humans on the face of the planet since the starting of time. And so that is teeming with life. We only know a very fraction of a small percent of what's actually happening in there. And so when I think about biodiversity, I think of resiliency. And another really quick example is like for every undesirable pest, insect, or species that might be a problem in an ecosystem, in a functioning ecosystem, there should be 1,400 predator insects for that. And so what happens when you come in there and you're spraying your insecticides is you are nuking the entire system. You're resetting it. And it turns out that the insects that are more undesirable are the ones that are most resilient. And so they're the ones that perpetuate and that dominate after that cycle. So again, it's just the resilience in the balance in which Mother Nature created homeostasis is all foundationally based on biodiversity.
Is it safe to say that you cannot rehabilitate broken soils because of these egregious practices without animal husbandry and agriculture?
It's 100%. Yeah. And that's, I feel like people were shy or nervous about saying it for a long time. Maybe they still are, but like there is no such thing as a plant-based system that is good for the planet. It is 100% founded upon extraction of nutrients and domination of Mother Nature. There's no other way. So if you go to Whole Foods or Natural Grocers or Sprouts, if you are shopping produce, you are supporting a system that's an extractive system, because think about it. You're literally taking something from the landscape, and what are you putting back on that landscape? Over time, if you extract money from your bank account and you never put more money in your bank account will collapse. Same thing is happening to the ecosystems. So the only way to heal that system is, again, look into the architecture of nature. Mother Nature created these abundant, fertile food systems with animals and plants. But when you remove animals from the systems, like keystone species like bison, everything suffers. The plants suffer. The plants turn out they need that animal impact to stimulate the growth of roots, to stimulate the growth of grass blades, to cycle oxidized carbon material back into the soil to feed the biology. The anatomical design of a bison hoof actually helps aerate soil, allows rainfall to go in, air to circle or cycle. It allows seeds to germinate. And so it's so dysfunctional to think that without that animal, the system could survive. Is just such a separation from reality. The only way that you do that is with chemicals, which is, again, always fighting that cycle of nature.
It's almost like nature knows, right? It's almost like there's some kind of intelligent design to this thing that's been happening for as long as we could even fathom. And that when we try and come in over the top and be so smart with our lab coats and synthetic stuff, that we probably break some shit in the process. Yeah,
and it's not even, there's that element to it where we need to be completely honest and say this plant-based system is 100% an extractive degenerative system. But on the other side, we need to say, that animal, that ruminant animal, that is a sacred entity. That is a gift from the source in which we can heal our landscapes. And so what does it look like to celebrate it? And right now we're demonizing it. And so really one of the things that I want to change that narrative is just empower people to say that's bullshit. That doesn't make sense. Like animals like bison, cows, sheep, goats, they are the highest level of a gift to restore and heal landscapes.
Hello friends, if you enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the entire thing by heading to this link over here, or you can find us wherever you find podcasts by searching Radical Health Radio. If there's value here, please hit that like button, let us know in a comment what your biggest takeaway was, and hit subscribe, support the show as we support you. We'll see you soon.